great. Wayne, thanks for your time. We're in the most appropriate place to talk about e-tolls because those annoying gantries are actually charging people. What's your next move, given what the finance minister is saying?
Well, our next move is to continue doing what we are doing. You know, if the finance minister thinks that e-tolls is here to stay, we must remind him that the people have spoken and the people have made the decision for him. At least 80% of them have. There's only about 20% compliance and declining. So if the gantries are physically here to stay and the lights are on and it's sending out invoices, that's one thing. But the reality is no one's paying. So we will continue to do exactly what we're doing, supporting the public to make sure that we defend them. And by the way, there's a court challenge which has been put on hold by SANRAL 8 months ago. We're asking them, what's going on here? You can't play these games and then pull out when it suits you because there's an election coming up.
Yeah, so there seems to be different talks and words coming from different officials. The finance minister says the user pay principle must be implemented. Of course, we know that David Makura says we've offered alternatives for them to actually pay the billions. What if none of that happens and people have to pay? What then?
Well, the people don't have to pay, you see, and that's the reality. So they keep saying, but your people must pay. But this is not like electricity where you can switch off when the users don't pay. You cannot switch off the highways. These cars are travelling here, and it's very difficult. And unfortunately for government, they seem to have this view that if they make legislation and regulations, the people will come and just submit. But when it's a grossly irrational policy and government cannot enforce and administer their own policies, well, then they suffer from this crisis of legitimacy, which is exactly what they're doing here. So no amount of forcing or coercing is going to change that, because they have thrown summonses, they've thrown threats of criminal action, they've dangled discounts. Nothing has worked for 6 years now.
Yeah, government of course says that it's going to look at changing legislation to actually hold people accountable if they don't pay their bills. If that does happen, you might see an increase of people actually paying up.
Well, we don't believe so. We will defend that matter. We will fight that matter. Remember, the court case that we have to fight still in court is one that's already been fought in the Western Cape, where SANRAL lost in all 3 courts. The scheme has been introduced unlawfully. There's a smell of corruption around it because this road cost twice as much as it should have. There's been no inquiry about that. ETC won the contract at 6.2 billion rand for 5 years, but the contract was signed at 9.9 billion. No answers, explanation. This is a corrupt scheme. The public have every right to fight it. So how Minister Mboweni, or anybody for that matter, thinks they're going to enforce it or shove it down the public's throat? And normally, when government starts to force unpopular and unworkable systems down the public's throat, they normally come second.
What about the rule of law and South Africans respecting it, especially when it comes to traffic? Because we ask people to respect the rules of the road. This is something that, of course, is making sure government would say our roads are in a good condition.
Absolutely they are. Nobody's denying the fact that SANRAL builds good roads and that we must pay for our infrastructure. But what matters first and foremost is that government obeys the rules of this country. The Constitution, Section 195, is very clear. Do your public consultation properly and meaningfully. Consult with the public before you go into these massive decisions. The minister needs to apply his mind. He didn't do that. The board of SANRAL went about a very hurried process in this matter. There are many issues here that are at stake from a legal point of view that we want to test in court, let alone the merits of the case, which makes it completely unworkable. So yes, we want to abide by the law, but make sure your laws are enforceable, workable, rational, and have the backing of the people.
All right, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
Pleasure.
That, of course, is Wayne Duvenage from Outer.